Hi guys, it's Simply Being Dan, and today we're back with something completely different. We are going to be doing a sit-down podcast type thing with a long friend that I haven't seen in a long time, Lizzie.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking about Black Lives Matter. It's a topic that both me and Lizzie feel quite strongly about. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. Lizzie's the only person who I've felt the same energy as me. It's been a lot
Thank
of
you.
going back and forth with people, but Lizzie felt that same energy, and I felt like it was the perfect opportunity. You know, with it quieting down, with the trend slowly going, it would be the perfect opportunity for me and Lizzie to sit down and talk about being mixed race, black, not the same colour, and just talk and have a ramble. So this could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour. We're just going to ramble. So we're going to start off. We've made some notes. We've got some notes. We try to act professional when we're not, but we got some notes.
Yeah, if we stumble or anything, I'm really shy. So I'm just putting it out there. I'll get into it. But
So all right, we're eventually we'll just pretend that the cameras ain't there. And we're just going to chat shit like we did last
just to
time.
catch up. Yeah.
So basically, the first thing that I want to say is like this is a disclaimer, just so that we don't get attacked. That this is how me and Lizzie feel. This is not how every black person feels. This is not how majority of black people feel. This is just what me and Lizzie have sat down and sort of discussed. We feel the same in pretty much all aspects of this. So it's a bit of a disclaimer that if you don't agree with us, that's fine. Leave some comments down in the comment section down below. But also remember that this is just to carry on the awareness. So please don't hate too much. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. So, as most of you guys know, I'm Dan. I'm now 21 and I work in IT. Lizzie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Liz. I'm 20, 21 in May. And I'm currently a second year international politics and policy and criminology student at the University of Liverpool. Bit of a
Jeez!
mouthful, I know. Yeah.
Jeez!
It's not as smart as it sounds. It's not. But it's just a really long degree. But yeah, I'm second year doing that in Liverpool now. So
So, Lizzie mentioned where she was based. She's based in Liverpool. I'm currently based in South Lincolnshire. That sort of borders Cambridgeshire and Norfolk. We're like right on the wash. That's where I'm based. Um, where I grew up, I've basically not lived anywhere else. I've literally born in Boston and have lived around the surrounding areas for my whole life. Lizzie, on the other hand, has been a man and
bit
like
everywhere. I know people say I've got quite a funny accent, but yes, I was born in London, lived in London for a little bit, then lived just outside of Cambridge, and then lived with Dan in near Spalding. I don't want to name drop my village. Yeah,
that's it. We'll leave that.
Cambridge, yeah,
We'll leave that weird place that we don't want to
yeah, that
mention.
dark crevice, yeah. And then spent a few years there, and then moved to Blackpool, and then now I live in Liverpool. So a bit all across the map, a little bit, me. But
So Lizzie, to be fair, has got so much to offer in this sit down. She's lived in so many different places where like predominantly black, predominantly white, predominantly mixed. Like Lizzie's got a lot to give to this, and I think like you guys should really listen to what she's got to say because she's experienced a lot more than what I have in the small little village where I live, where basically there's not many black people. Let's just put it like that.
yeah.
So, like what I said, there's no time frame on this. We're literally just going to ramble. The idea for me is for me and Lizzie to explain how we felt growing up, how we have dealt with things, how we want things to move forward, and then hopefully we can then get hopefully a guest that either is a viewer or somebody that we know to sort of who is white. I'm gonna cut the bullshit. Who is white, and then who can sort of show their side of the story growing up with black people not so round the area, and then hopefully we can also get somebody who's white who's lived in a predominantly black area and black people, when I say black I mean not mixed, who can then come on and talk about their experiences. So we want this not to just be a one-off thing and people think that we're jumping on the bandwagon, because this is something that me and Lizzie both feel strongly about. So we're hoping that we can sort of invite people on and we can talk about our differences. You know, if somebody doesn't like black people, that's also not an issue. We'd love to have you on and hopefully iron out the hatred that you've got. So we're all open here. We all got love. A lot of people don't think that we've got love, but we're full of love.
We're full of love, yeah. Also, like, we're aware that we're not speaking on every black person. Like, I can't speak on behalf of a black girl. Like, I'm mixed race. As the same way, I don't speak on behalf of like every single mixed girl out there. We're just speaking about our own experiences, and we'd love you to all get involved. To hear more,
We would literally love for like, because we can only talk about our experiences. Like I know like my cousins have got different experiences, my brother's got different experiences. So we would definitely love to have maybe like a sit down with some guests and some viewers, and we can all talk about our experiences growing up, and hopefully we can then create a community where we can all share love. And when we've had bad days, we can talk about it, and when we've had good days, we can also share the love. So moving on to the first topic, we've split this up into sort of topics so that people can sort of jump in and out of where they want to listen to or where it's relevant to them. But we've started off basically growing up from like 0 to 11, so like covering primary schools. So I went to a small primary school in South Lincolnshire near Spalding, and basically I think I was the second black person in the whole of my school at the time. There wasn't many black people. I think it's only fair if Lizzie, you probably go first on this one because you've done. I want to know what it was like for you growing up when you was 0 to 11.
yeah. To be fair, it probably wasn't much different in the sense of. So I grew up in a tiny little village called Longstanton. You probably won't have heard of it. But like outside Cambridge City Centre, about half an hour, 20-minute drive away. And sorry, I've got a cough. Yeah. So I'm a twin. So wherever I've been, I've always had him. I've always had like another black or mixed race person with me, regardless. But I think me and David, we were the only, apart from this one boy called Joshua. Yeah, we were the only black kids in our little school as well. But it wasn't something that we really, really noticed. But then looking back, when I look back on like pictures of me and my friends or like school photos and stuff, you're like, oh wow, actually, yeah, there's like no diversity at all. So it is pretty crazy when you think about it, but probably quite similar than I was like the only black girl that went. I think I was the only black girl in the village actually.
So like in South Lincolnshire, like where I'm based, so this is how small the black community is, right? That like once a month, right, my dad and the other black people would all meet up for a drink. All of them. And I'm not even lying. Like, I could literally like, there was like my dad. A couple of them like come from like Ghana. To be fair, like a lot of them were like from Ghana who'd come over, and my dad obviously not having any black friends or any black people. He like literally like that connection was there straight away. So like I can remember there was like maybe like 4 of us. So like my dad and 4 others in the whole of where we live. Like don't get me wrong. There's a couple more now. What is like it's nice to see, and it's really nice that, to be fair, it seems like they have fitted into the community a bit better. But like yeah, so when I was growing up, when I was like 3 or 4, I always remember my dad and his mates always like coming over to ours because we had like at the time they were all like in rented accommodation, so like they always used to come over ours. And at the time, like if they just had children, I was friends with them. I remember like literally random thing ever that's just popped in my mind. I remember we was in Spalding and we saw one of them and he was waiting for the bus, and my dad was like, "Oh, just get in the car, like we'll just drop you off home, mate, like no biggie." But like if I saw somebody who I knew waiting for the bus stop, I'm not gonna lie, I probably wouldn't even give him a lift.
You'd be like,
yeah, I'm literally just like, oh god.
They're like, Dan. You're like,
I'm just like, no, I did not hear. I'll get an Instagram and everything. I'm like, I didn't hear you. I didn't hear
what?
you.
Oh my god, I wasn't even in town. Yeah, yeah, but no, that's really nice that they had that sort of like really close network and like a super small community that's kind of been forced together through being so isolated, I guess.
And it's like mad because like I look back at it now and like I just think it's mad because like I look at some of my friends now who are like mixed race black who have gone on to uni, and the people that they've mixed with are like nobody that are around this area. So like all of my black mates or mixed race mates who have gone to uni have all found mixed race and black groups. Like if I look on their Snap right now, they're living it up in uni with like 8 other black people.
Yeah, there's one person that really comes to mind, and like the only other like black person at one of my schools, the other black girl, and oh my god, like she is thriving.
Oh my god,
like,
she is doing bits. I think
we're
we're thinking about the same.
Oh, I don't even want to like. I wasn't even friends with her, but I just want to like go up and be like, "You're glowing. Like you are thriving. You have thrived and grown so much since like that shitty all white high school where you probably felt like, oh, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? When you just like you found your place, but
to be fair to her, like her there was a time where her friends and her were doing like a Snapchat group, and that group like they were answering questions. It was the maddest Snapchat that I'd ever seen. It was mad. It was literally mad.
But she's just amazing.
And the thing is like that, like she's thrived in an environment what was not like what she's grew up in. Like she grew up in a small town in Crowland, and like literally it was like her brother, and then when they met me, I was the only other black person that they'd basically met. So there was like her
That's
brother,
insane.
and then like she's gone on to like uni, and she's now thriving in the area that she's in. What is bigger respect? Like, look, I love it.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love it. Nothing but love. Oh my god, she's glowing at all times.
She is literally glowing. That glow is that glow.
We're just bigging around here.
I know what I'm saying. They don't even know that we're talking about them. We're just bigging them up.
But if you know who are Black Girl Magic, I'll have a drink for you.
Can I actually mention, right? There's an artist. I think you pronounce it She Lingo. He signed to Idris Elba label, and he has a song called Black Girl Magic. Listen to that song. It is all about like black girls glowing. It is mad.
We love to see it.
Honestly, I'm gonna tag it down below just because I fucking love that song. And he actually replied to an Insta of mine once. He's not big headed. He's not big headed. I literally DM'd him. I was like, I heard your music in H&M, and he was like, oh my god, cheers, mate. And I was just like, oh my god, he just replied to my Insta. I was like, oh shit. Getting back on topic though.
Sorry.
When do you think you had your first racial experience to the point, like, if you didn't have any, like, between 0 and 11, like, you did great, because I had loads.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. No, I don't think I had a lot of, like, I don't want to say negative racial experiences, like, not as bad as, like, what we spoke about last week. But mine was sort of, like, just noticing I was different. So, like, we were a really small primary school, so, like, everybody kind of knew everybody. And I remember, like, a couple of times being like, oh, you look like Pooh, or oh my god, you're like a monkey. Yeah. And it was all like, in the moment we're all laughing, we're all giggling, and then suddenly you go home, you think about it, and you're like, oh my, I've just let them say that about me.
The thing is, like, primary school is ruthless because they do not know any different. Like, they do not even realise that they're even, like, when they're younger anyway, they like, I've, like, picked up my niece and nephew, and the kid's been like, oh my god, mum, there's a chocolate man. And the mum's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I'm like, no, it's calm. It's calm because like they just don't know. But it is crazy like how many kids around these areas just don't know.
Just insane. Like, I remember it was all in jest, like no harm done, whatever. But there were so many times where like somebody said something really racist, and I've just laughed off, and the teacher's been like, oh, you can't say that, and then they've been like, oh, okay. But I didn't really get a lot, but I was really close to David, and David like got bullied a lot. Like well, when you knew him, he was like really skinny, really tall. But like, he used to be shorter than me, skinnier than me, and he used to get like ruthless. The boys were ruthless all the time.
The thing is, like David, unfortunately, is like that perfect target for bullying.
Yeah, he's like he was. I won't say he was easy, but like I'm trying to like build a picture of him if you don't know him. But so I was probably about like. So I'm 5'7" now. I was probably about 5'6", 5'7" when I was like 15, 16. Oh, I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, so he was always like a good like head shorter than me.
He was small. Really, he was skinny. Small and he was dead skinny. Bless him. Like he was. Yeah. Like he was like. It sounds awful, but like. You know, like the Ethiopian runners.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like that kind of build. Like that's kind of the build that he was. So
Yeah.
he
And he's
was an easy
also,
target.
yeah, he's also on the spectrum. So like he would be in with a group of lads, and the only reason why he's there is not because they're good mates, it's because he'll do whatever. So if they say, "Oh, David, go and like shop and like nick that," he'll be like, "Yeah, right, I'll do it." And like he thinks, "Oh, I'm in now." Like they're doing that because they're my mates and they do the same for me. So he was just a really easy target, and I don't think he realised a lot of the time that what was going on wasn't actually like friendship, it was like racism and like just
Yeah.
boys not being nice. Yeah, so that was sad.
But like, yeah, so for people who don't know, like I played when I was younger a lot of football, and my first ever racial experience, I probably would have been about 6. Well, it's really young, I think, to have your first racial experience. I was playing against a football team, Wisbech St Mary's. Wisbech, don't get me wrong, is a bit of a backwards place, and no offence if you're from there, if you're listening, but as a whole, it's a very racist and a very backwards area. You know, a lot of the locals don't like the Eastern Europeans, and the list goes on of people that they don't like. And when I was 6 years old, I was the captain of the football team, and we beat their team. I don't even know what the score was. And in the football team, there was me, Jamal, and an Indian lad called Rajan. And at the end of the game, the parents and the players who were being egged on by their parents dropped bananas and were making monkey chants at us. And obviously, when you're 6 years old, you don't. I didn't understand it, so I was like, "Oh, you've dropped your banana," and I think like me not understanding at the time like kind of made it worse because I was like, "Oh, you've dropped your banana." Like I think they saw that as me like egging them on a little bit, like, "Oh, you dropped your banana." So
No,
like,
oh, you're being sarcastic, yeah.
so it got a bit worse, to be fair, and like I didn't understand. Like my football manager was so angry. He like don't get me wrong, like big up to my old football manager Tommy. He did so much for me when I was younger. I was like, he always used to call me his second son because he only had one son. And I was always around their house, and he always used to call me a second son. And like when it was all happening, like, you know, like them big like football coats, like they're massive, big puffer ones. Like he had one of them, and he was like shielding us from it so that we didn't have to see it. Like, and he was like telling us to go sit in the car. And he was angry and frustrated, but obviously we didn't understand. But that was when I had my first racial experience, and then from then it probably only got better for a period of time because I didn't understand it. But as I started to understand like more about being black and stuff like that, I think it only got worse because the more in touch that I got on my black side, the more people were like trying to push against that. So when I was in year 4, my granddad, like, don't get me wrong, my granddad's that stereotypical black man, and he probably wouldn't mind me saying he's not had the greatest of past, but he's definitely making up for it now. He wasn't really around for my dad, and that resulted in me not really seeing my granddad on my dad's side. But when I did see him, you know, he tried to teach me life skills. Like, he was a person that taught me how to tie my shoelaces. He was the person that told me that once I get a good girlfriend, I need to like never let them go. Like, you know, he made lots of mistakes, but he tried to rectify them as he got older. But like my granddad had come to visit me, and it was the first time that I'd seen my granddad in maybe like, I don't know, like 8 years. And basically it's like one of the first times I'd ever met my granddad, and I knew that he was got a farm in Jamaica, and he had goats, and he basically had his own little farm. And I remember like it was show and tell at school, so I did show and tell. And at my primary school was like years 3 and 4 were like together, so the higher ability 3s and then like the lower ability year 4s were like in the same class. And the people who were in the year above me but in the same class, they started being like, "Oh, you're gonna have black babies, that's disgusting." And I was going out with a girl at the time, like, I don't know, like, you can call her, I had a girlfriend in air quotations because, God, you just held hands basically and spent a bit of time with each other. And bless, like, she basically, like, she got bullied as well for going out with me. And it basically didn't stop until I had a fight. Was basically what it resulted in. It resulted in somebody...
Push.
Yeah, it resulted in somebody... And it's probably one of the nicest insults I've ever had as a black person. He called me a Jamaican bastard. And at the time, it really hurt me But now I look back at it, and it's probably one of the nicest insults I've ever had.
That bounced straight back off. Yeah.
I literally, like, when he said it, like, I remember I saw red. I was punching him. Like, don't get me wrong. I will hold my hands up and I say I beat the shit out of this kid when I was in year 3, and I beat the shit out of this kid who was a year older than me, and I felt good. But you know, that was my first time that I'd ever had something like that, where like I knew that it was said in anger. Like, it was the first time where I was like, they're saying that to hurt me. And like, don't get me wrong, like, you don't even like, I didn't understand it then, and I don't understand it now, but I just knew that it was something that was meant to hurt me. So that was that. How did, like, I like what you said. I'm guessing, you know, we've got a question here of like how many black people were there in the area, but you literally said there was you, your brother, and one other person.
It was me, my brother, and one family. Yeah, and they were Indian as well. So that's literally all I can think of. And at secondary school, I went to a different secondary school to youth for like 2-3 years. It was me, David, and I think again one other black guy. So like, that was it.
So that nicely leads us on into like the early years and mid-teens of how did secondaries go for you?
Yeah, I don't want to say rough, but no. Well, I was always like not quiet, but like I think if my friends like,
Lizzie, you was quiet.
I wouldn't call her quiet.
You was.
You didn't speak. Yeah. I'm quite an outspoken person, but like back then I was very quiet. Like I was just happy with my own little group of people, happy doing my own things, getting on like my own things. And I think that's because like my brother was always like, he was always a really loud and outgoing one. Like the one that if people were speaking to me, they would come to speak to me about my brother. Like, oh my god, do you know what David just did? And I'd be like, no, I don't want to know who you are. But yeah, I was just very quiet. So I just kept my head down a lot really, and just got on with me.
So, Lizzie, you joined in like year 9?
Yeah, I think it was year 9 or 10, just after options.
So, Lizzie joined the school that I was at in year 9, and I believe the first person that they gave you as a friend was a girl called Shania?
Yeah.
So, basically, let's just say that Shania sometimes got herself in a little bit of trouble with a couple of people. So like being me, Lizzie being new, and also being black, I kind of like, me and like Lizzie had that black connection. So I tried to make sure that like Lizzie knew who I was, where I like kind of like where I lived, like what I did, and like I think like we were like dead close for a long time.
Yeah, I think we were in the same English class for like a year.
And did you sit behind me?
You.
I think you sat behind
me.
Yeah,
behind you, I think, yeah.
Yeah, but like, so I'm just thinking about like English was god awful.
Yeah, Miss Murder, I do love you.
But, big up Miss Murder. But you also then got like, realistically, you was too smart for us, and then you moved the pisset anyway, so...
No, I wasn't. I love that. Yeah.
You just moved the pisset, and I was still left in that set, getting absolutely destroyed every week.
I remember that teacher was off. She was off by her side.
Oh my god, she was off for like 6 months. Oh my Jesus.
We just had a supply like every day. I remember being sat down and like you'd be in front of us, and like there was like 4 of us. I don't know who else it was. And we just sit there and be like, are we just going to like chat all lesson?
I actually don't know who else it was, but we had some banter in English, you know?
Yeah.
Like English wasn't normally a lesson you had banter in, but I had some, like English when she was off for like 6 months was banging.
That was good. I remember walking back in, or like, I walked in and sat down and I got taken out and they're like, we're moving you to Miss Seymour's class. And I was like, what?
Yeah, you got moved up and I literally was like, oh, English is now dead, you know?
yeah, that's it now, yeah. I'll sit back in silence again.
So, basically, at school, because I lived in the same area, I just went to the same secondary school. And because of, like, what I did outside of school, so playing sports, it automatically put me in the cool group, or the group that wasn't bullied. I kind of drifted...
You're like Lizzie, however.
Yeah, like, so I was in between the group that didn't get bullied and the cool group. There wasn't actually like a stand-out group.
Yeah.
There was kind of like lots of different groups, and then like at the weekend, all of them different groups would kind of meet up together, and I was like always a part of that. So like I actually had it quite easy in secondary school. There was only maybe a handful of times people made comments, but at the same time, I was one of them people where like I never wanted to get angry because I'm one of them people where like once I lose my temper, I ain't calming down for ages. So I used to try keep my temper. I can't honestly hand on heart say there was a time when there was a time where I was racially abused to my face. There was lots of rumours of people saying stuff behind my back, but obviously without the evidence, I couldn't really do it about it. So secondary school was quite tame for me, really. But going in between the first topic and the second topic of how do you think your family set you up for being in the area that you live? Do you think that your family set you up to do well, or do you think that they could have done a bit more?
I think like my dad spent quite a bit of time like in my life, then out of my life, then back in my life, sort of thing. So when he was around, he set me and David up really well. I'd say like I remember like every night before bed, even when we lived back in Cambridge, it'd be a fact like he would come sit down with us and talk to us like about politics, about race, about if somebody said something that's hurt my feelings, why have they said that, or why didn't they said that, or like there was never a time I sat down and I thought I don't know what to do, I don't know who to go to or who I can talk to you like about that. But then in the same breath, like I love my mum, bless her, but like as a black girl, I feel like maybe more so than David, there's a lot of elements of like black culture I completely missed out on. So stuff like hair and like having other black friends, like we were quite close to my dad's side of the family, but they were all sort of like boys. I have like loads of cousins they're predominantly guys. So like whereas they would fit in quite well, I was always quite a lot more reserved and kind of on my own. So I think as a black girl growing up, I did feel quite isolated because I had no black friends around me. The friends I did have around me were all girls. They were all white. I love them all. But like I always felt like I didn't really fit in. And then even like moving around schools, like hand on heart, I could never say I went somewhere, sat down, like saw a girl that looked like me and thought, oh, like maybe I can make a connection, because there never was. Like even with other black girls in the school, I was kind of like, you have that thing where you're like, well, I've been raised by sort of like white people. I've been raised in a really white neighborhood. So like they probably just think, not that I'm like the rest, but like I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like you struggle. Like I don't really have I didn't feel like
You didn't have an identity.
So I don't. Yeah, I didn't fit in with the black people, but I didn't really feel like I fitted in with the white people, and that kind of just left me by myself, which is quite isolating. I think growing up, definitely.
I think that's a topic that we'll talk about later. Is like feeling like we're stuck in the middle, because it's something that we touched on about in the black community. So like we're too dark to fit in with the whites, but we're not dark enough to fit in with the blacks. That's definitely something that we'll touch on later. But I definitely agree with the aspect of, I feel like my dad's been in my whole life. Like I've been quite lucky in that aspect that my mum and dad have stayed together. My mum's white and from Scotland, and my dad is English but has a Jamaican heritage. My nan and granddad on my dad's side are both Jamaican. So, you know, my dad, I feel like, tried to actually, from my opinion, you know, it might be that I get a voice note from him and I'll pod it in the next episode, or I'll pop it in here. I feel like my dad tried to shelter me from the hate as much as possible, actually. I felt like he didn't want me to find out what the real world was like before my time type thing.
Before you had to.
Yeah, like my dad, he was born in the 1970s. It was extremely racist. My dad told me that he used to have to fight almost every day just to prove himself to people. He used to get called a nigger all the time. You know, my dad was like racially abused basically from the ages of, I don't know, 13 all the way up into his adult life. And, you know, my dad's been racially abused at work in recent years. So my dad's definitely dealt with it more because of that generational thing. But I felt like my dad tried to shelter me from that life. And then, you know, my mum's openly admitted that she doesn't understand what it's like to be black. So she could never help me prepare because she just naturally didn't know what it was like. So I feel like in hindsight, I wish that my dad had actually just been more brutal to me. Like after my first racial experience of being called like a black bastard, my dad basically just told me, you can't retaliate. People are going to carry on doing it. and you just can't retaliate. And I wish that like actually from that conversation he just probably just laid it all out on the table. But that's looking back in hindsight,
Mm.
and I think actually he was trying to do the best thing as a father and protect his son and try and
Yeah.
to shelter him
It
away
is
from
really
the
hard,
hate.
yeah. Like,
So
where do you draw that line? And then, like, you don't want to not ruin a childhood, but like, you don't want your childhood to be tainted by this idea that one day you go into school and like you don't see yourself as any different. And you go
yeah,
home, you have this massive talk about race, and you go in the next day and like you see yourself as different, and you
yeah.
isolate yourself. Yeah,
So like yeah, so that's like how I honestly feel. I also feel like my black side of the family, my dad's side of the family, you know, I feel like they also sort of fed into that thing of that I didn't have an identity. You know,
mm.
some of my dad's family, you know, I love them all to pieces, and I don't mean any hate, but you know, they used to call me like a terrorist because like my skin, like I'm quite a dark mixed race. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I've got a big halo light here. I've got a big LED above me, but like, I'm actually quite a dark mixed race.
Yeah,
But you know, when I was growing up, you know, I'll pop some photos somewhere. I did look kind of Asian growing up because my skin color hadn't quite developed properly. It was more like you know, basically I looked Indian. I don't know what the way to
yeah,
describe it, but I looked Indian growing up, and I probably didn't start to look black until well, probably until 13, 14 when I met you, Lizzie, is probably when I
yeah,
started to look black because my skin had started to turn a little bit darker. I started to have the characteristics of a black person. You know, she used to call me a terrorist and things, and that definitely is something that's stayed with me for my whole life.
yeah. I got a lot of that, like even like coconut, as in like, oh, you're black on the outside, but actually like you are a white person.
Yeah,
I got that like off like really close family members, and like they're just laughing. You're expected to laugh it off, and you think like my own family's not going to accept me for like things I can't help. Then like how am I going to like have a hope that people that don't know me aren't thinking that or aren't saying that or aren't like distancing themselves from me because of that as well.
the thing
It
is,
is,
it's like
yeah,
that's like their way of like justifying like your whiteness. So like, oh, you're black on the
mm,
outside, but actually you're white on the inside. When actually, realistically,
it's not, yeah,
we take the skin away. We're all
mm,
the same color. Do you know what I mean? We all bleed the same color. We all piss,
mm,
shit, sick the same color.
mm,
It's just one of the things where I feel like over the generations, it's like things that are like, oh, you're like a coconut. You're black on the outside, but white on the inside. Well, actually, does me speaking properly mean that I'm white? No, it just probably means that I'm well educated. You know, it doesn't
mm,
mean that I'm white. It doesn't mean that I'm more black. It just means that actually I'm just well educated, and well educated people or black people shouldn't be ashamed to be well educated, to be then put into the white box. I feel like that's something that maybe, you know, we didn't even talk about that last time, but actually
yeah,
generate like I think like generationally, and we sort of pop into that. Oh, you fit in that white category because you're educated. You talk like this or you talk
okay,
like
and
that.
what, yeah. Well, and what do you want me to do about that? Like,
So
if anything, you should be like, I'm proud of you. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just insane that I'm not. I'm proud of like my black side. I'm proud of who I am as like a mixed race person. So don't try and diminish that by saying, oh well, you're this as well.
yeah,
Well, yeah, it's part of me. Like, I can't separate the two things. That's something I wish that like maybe my parents had better prepared me for, was like not the outright racism, like slurs and physical abuse, but like the hidden institutional racism, or even like the racism that you're like, you think back and you're like, was that racist or was that just, I feel like, I don't know if guys experience that a lot, but like with girls I get it a lot anywhere, is in like it's not outright racism, but it's something you think about and you think, I wonder why they've said that, or they've only said that because I'm mixed race, or like
yeah.
things like, is your hair normally like that, or wow, you've got curly, like do you curl it like that every day, and stuff like that, like the playing on ignorance to
The
like
thi-
wind me up.
and that's the thing of like actually, you know, like we're talking about this to educate people, and actually we need to educate people because I like for you. Oh, is your hair naturally curly? Like even I get it, and I've got white
Yeah,
person's hair. I'm not gonna lie, I got white people hair, and I braid it, but like I get it where like, oh, is your hair naturally curly? do you walk up to a white person and the first thing that you say is, "Oh, have you got nappy afro? Is your hair naturally curly?" Like,
Yeah.
you just expect them
Yeah.
to have straight hair. Like, you
Yeah.
don't. You like
I
don't.
get that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, like people walk up to me all the time and like, "Oh, is your hair like curly? Is it an afro? Or is it?" And when I say, "Oh, I've got straight hair," they're like, "What do you mean you got straight hair?" I'm like, "Well, my mum's white, so I got. I took that gene that my mum had. I've ended up with it. I've got white.
I've got it. Yeah.
I've got that white hair. And don't get me wrong, like as I've got older, it's definitely got like more curly. And like obviously, when I was growing up, I had a perm because everybody had a perm. And realistically, like that perm sort of stayed. Like it's never really gone.
Yeah. I got that a lot when I was younger. Like if I ever wore my hair down, it was like, oh, you've got like a mane. Or wow, your hair's crazy. Your hair's wild. And when you're young, you don't think about it. But like as you grow older, you think like these descriptive words you're using to describe my hair. Like it's offensive. Like I don't have a mane. I don't like a tiger. I don't have a lion. Like do you know what I mean? Like I've just got hair.
I just got
like,
and that's the thing. Like, yeah. It's like connotations with black people are always negative. Like you've got blonde, beautiful hair. A white woman, like you don't ever think of like I don't know, something to do with black women. Like I can't name one because I physically can't think of one.
Crazy afro or uncontrollable.
Yeah,
mane
uncontrollable.
Or like that. Yeah,
it's all negative, and that's stuff that. Yeah, it's not offensive, and we don't want to make the world a fucking where you can't say nothing. But I feel like we need to also think about the words that we use over years, like what you said, say it for me, Lizzie.
Institutional.
There we go. Like that is like just being passed down. It's something that we accept. When actually, like maybe we should just change the adjective and just change it to something something less offensive. Because why should my hair be a crazy afro? Why can't it be elegant afro?
Yeah. Why are you asking me how many times a week I wash my hair, but you're not asking like Annabelle? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Annabelle washes her hair, I don't know, the same amount of time that everybody else washes her hair. But it's like, and that's the crazy thing. It's like, oh my God, secondary school, somebody like, I don't know, gets a bit of, I don't know, on their white shirt, gets something a bit black. And like, oh my God, you're rubbing off on me.
I got that.
Oh, like, do you know what I mean? It's stuff like that.
The lights go off. I can't see you.
Oh.
Where have you gone, Liz?
Right, you know what, like that one there, the light one, it's something that experience all the time. Like it's just one of the things where like it's funny, but because every black person's experienced it, it's kind of like thing like it's overused now. Like let's think of something new, or smile and open your teeth, we might be able to see you. It's just like it's kind of funny. And don't get me wrong, like with some of my and it's that line of with some of my closest friends, I'll flat out have some racist banter with them, like flat out, and I love it. I think it's hilarious. But they're my day ones.
Yeah,
like
there's a difference between
like my day one Tyler, like he could literally say anything to me, and I'd literally be like, "That's funny as fuck." But like if somebody else said it, I'd be like, "You don't actually know me like that, so why are you saying it?"
Yeah.
And there's like, and I guess like it does make it confusing because I could walk up to you and say, "Oh, sup nigga," and you'd be like, "Oh, what's cool?" Like nothing. But it's like the best way that I can describe it is like black people have started to like use the words that were negative and try to turn them into something that is not negative. So like me saying "sup nigga" or "hi nigga," whatever, isn't nothing to do with me being racist to Lizzie or being racist to any black person. We're using stuff that was used against us or ways that we were described back in the slavery days and before that, and we're actually using it in our own power. Like we've taken the power away from that word because we're now using it. Like if somebody,
I think it's now our powerful word.
Yeah,
makes sense.
like when black people say it, white people feel uncomfortable. And actually, it was white people that used it to describe us. So actually, it's kind of a bit of a touche. Like, you're now feeling uncomfortable for a word that you described us as. It's kind of ironic that you're now the ones who are feeling uncomfortable and don't want rappers to sing about it. It's like, oh, like it's pathetic.
It's the same way, like in feminism, like the word like bitch and slut is starting to be reclaimed. But then nobody is going about in songs being like, you can't say that word. Why is everybody saying the word bitch? Well, not the what's the difference sort of thing, but like if like the girls have reclaimed that word and you haven't got a problem with it, then why can't this group of individuals that have been like abused, systemically racialized, like past hundreds of years, reclaim a word that is so meaningful and holds so much power, and then you want to tell me that you shouldn't be saying that, or why can't I say it? It's so deep, but at the same time, it's like it's not deep enough for you to be arguing your point about why you want to say it to me. Do you know what I
It's
mean?
just like, and also like we're now going to be moving on to the topic of like, actually, one thing that I want to mention. Did you go to prom?
Yeah.
What like? How did you feel at prom? Because like, don't get me wrong, like there is two girls who are black, you and the other person that we mentioned earlier, and
Yeah.
like, how did that like? And like, there was obviously hundreds of white girls all in their dresses. How did
Yeah.
you feel on prom? Did you feel like intimidated
I
or?
yeah, see, a lot of girls that had really positive experience like prom, but I probably hated it. Like apart from like the after party, I hated prom. Like to me, all it did was like I don't know if the other black girl that went to school felt like this because she was stunning on prom. Again, big up you.
Big
But
up you.
yeah, big up you. But yeah, but all that did to me was like I don't know what the word is for it, but when it like put something into place where I was like, right, yeah, like all these white girls are stunning, they are beautiful. Like this is the beauty standard, and I was like, and I don't match it. Like all it was like a constant reminder of like girls coming in dresses, like another girl, and like I remember just standing there and being like, no, I don't fit in, but I was like, this isn't for me. Like I clearly don't fit in here. Like it was
Yeah.
like a really rubbish experience. But I know like a lot of people throwing back like prom was like a really good night or it was amazing. Like, I didn't even have any pictures from prom. Like it was
Uh,
that unsignificant to me.
the
Like,
thing is with
yeah,
prom, like, the thing is with prom is like, by that point, um, I'd kind of, I had a girlfriend at the time who obviously it was serious at the time, and I through my own mistakes as a person, and I hold my hands up. I was thinking about this the other day. Like I used to be such a toxic person as a whole. Like and that's why I've decided to do things like this to try to spread the positivity. And like through being a toxic person and making mistakes and making that girl feel conscious about herself, I ended up like prom was meant to be like this magical night, and like for me, it just wasn't. And that
mm,
wasn't because of anything to do with race. That was just because the group of boys who were like my day ones, I'd kind of pushed away to keep this girl happy, but the girl wasn't really happy, and it was a right faff. The whole night was a fucking.
yeah,
The whole night was a fucking faff. But like,
right off.
for me as well, like I was literally the only black male. Oh, wait, no, your brother went. Did your brother go?
No, I don't think he did. I
Uh,
think he'd been expelled at that point. Yeah,
oh, we won't. We
bless
won't mention
him.
that one. We'll just skim over that one.
Just good. Yeah.
I like me being the only black male. Like I was so nervous. Like I think everybody is nervous, but like I was so nervous. Like knowing that like in all of the photos I was going to be the only black person. In all of the photos I was going to stand out. Like I almost felt like the limelight was on me when it probably wasn't, and that's just how I felt. But that's grown up in a predominantly white area.
Mm.
But like one thing that I wanted to talk about that is kind of on the spot is I saw this thing and it was black people are like we can do whatever we want now within reason, but do you think because of the way that the system's set up that we're still set up to fail? So it's like because of we're black and because of our history, do you still think that we're actually being held back and can't do as well as what we could in the education system?
Um, to an extent, I do because I don't think I think like when you say like we're all equal, then on paper, yeah, we are. On paper, there's different schemes to get like black people up to scratch, sort of thing. But I do think that like we are always at a disadvantage, and you might not see it like as in like if you sit in a math class, you might not see it. But again, like being like one of the only black person at a school, that can impact somebody's attainment. So if I don't feel comfortable in an educational setting, I don't feel comfortable in a history class that's talking about the slave trade and everybody's staring at me. I don't feel comfortable sitting in an English class where like people are throwing around swear words and I don't feel comfortable. I don't have any friends. That's going to affect my attainment because the school isn't a place where I feel comfortable and I don't feel happy learning. Whereas compared to like my white counterpart, like say Megan, for example, my best friend at school, she probably felt a lot more comfortable because she didn't face the same barriers I faced or I felt like I was facing. So I don't think when you say like, are we all equal? It's not as simple as like looking at paperwork, looking at grades. But I do think that there is definitely barriers, and there might not be physical ones, but like mentally, and even within the home. Like I feel like we face different things in the home. We have different cultural expectations of us. Different things are held like higher importance over education, or education's held above different things. So I do feel like there are loads of barriers within education. And then I found as well, I was going to mention this later on, but I'll mention it now. When I went to start my uni applications, I managed to get a interview at quite a good uni. And I remember telling all my friends being really excited for it, but being like, I probably won't get it though because like like I'm not very good at this subject, or I'm not going to get these grades. And I remember like at least three or four of my closest friends, like my closest friends, have been like, well, you will get it because like you tick all the boxes. Like you're black, you spent some time in care, like you're poor, sort of thing. She's like, you're definitely gonna get it. And I remember at that point like sitting down and being like, this is all I am. Like even within my friends in the education system, I'm working so hard in. Like all I am to some people with a tick in the box.
Ticking the box.
And that to me was, yeah, that was so disheartening. So I feel like, yeah, education can be like aspects of education can be a massive barrier, even though we don't really see them. But it is insane because then when you are doing well and you are thriving, to so many people, all you'll be is a tick in the box,
Mm.
no matter what you do.
I feel like as well, that great phrase is, I have to try 10 times harder to be considered as
100%.
good as the next person. Definitely applies to a lot of cases, from our experience anyway. I also think that we're held back. I think like you take back not even what we're looking at 70 years ago. Black people had different schools. What then led to black people not having the same amount of education standards as the white people, because we couldn't go to the white schools. So blacks were being taught by blacks, but if them blacks didn't go to school, what were the younger blacks going to know? And I think it's kind of stemmed down to, yeah, you've taken off the stabilizer and you've let us ride our bike, and you're going to let us do everything that we can. But because of the way that we've been set up for so many years, we're essentially, I feel like we're set up to fail because we've not had the same start in life as a race. We've not had the same start, so we've got to then play catch up with what's been going on. So you sort of say, for I don't know, we say you take 100 years off black people being smart, basically, for the way that we was treated. So I feel like black people, it's a sort of generalized thought, and it's kind of a bold one, but like we were held back for like 100 plus years. So essentially, we're still 100 plus years behind education. Even though that our education's the same as that white person's education, my mum and dad, and you say my nan and like my dad, my nan didn't probably receive the greatest education. Then it gets passed on to my dad, where he said it was extremely racist, even though that he went to a mixed white and black school. And I know that the segregation was mostly in America anyway, but you sort of stem it back of, if our parents weren't taught the greatest practices, then that gets passed down to us, even though that we're in that same academic class. We are still set behind, whether we take the genes from our mum and dad, or however it all works. I personally think that we are set up to systematically fail, because we're still like 100 years behind. Now, another thing that I also think is there's not been enough progress on trying to catch that loss up. You can do this by investing into black communities, putting youth programs in, putting stuff in, because what happens is the cycle continues. The black people live in the poorer areas because we couldn't get the education because of where we grew up, and the cycle continues. People in London in the city blocks, they resort to doing illegal things to try to get money because the education system is failing them. There's nothing in the local areas, and then like the black community is always going to go around in these circles unless something changes. And that's not black people. You could just say, we'll move into the nicer areas, but we can't afford it because we can't get them nicer jobs. Like I said last time that we spoke, Lizzie, in Jamaica, people are dyeing and bleaching their skin to be whiter to try get jobs, because whiter is seen as more trustworthy and more more trustworthy and more suitable for work. and that it all stems down to we've been set up systematically for so many years to fail that there comes a point where we actually need to start reinvesting into the black communities. If not, the cycle's going to continue, and we're never ever going to catch up / have the same outcome as white people.
100%, I agree. And even like in individual choices, like when I was younger, thinking like job prospects and what I'm interested in, like so I do politics or some international politics at uni, and I remember telling like my family this, and like even my mum being like why are you doing that? Like what on earth are you going into politics for? And that's that sort of thing. Like when I look at the TV, like, I don't see people like us really in politics, in law. I don't see us like leading companies or like being in really prominent positions really. Like the amount of politicians I could name growing up that were black were probably like one or two, and like that really stood out to me, like if that. So I remember like thinking to myself, if I'm not seeing myself reflected, I don't have any aspirations in front of me what I can aim to like a lot of other people my age did. Then what do you think? Like, well, I'm not asked then, like, well, I don't need these quiz grades because I'm clearly not going to end up being like a politician. I'm clearly not going to end up being like this world-renowned lawyer because there's nobody that looks like me up there. So education therefore loses its importance.
And the thing is even when we've had them role models, we go back to Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, there's been many others along the way. Even when we've had them role models have been taken away from us. You know, we had good role models, like black. White people always say that black people have not got good role models. Yada yada yada. We actually had good role models. You take away Malcolm X, you take away the crazy part of him. What he was standing for was correct. At the time we had Martin Luther King, we had Malcolm X. They were fighting for the same thing, doing two separate things. You had Martin Luther King as being peaceful protest, who was killed on a balcony minding his own business. And, he was, it was fucking awful, the shit that they did to him. And then, like, Malcolm X, he was fed up of doing the peaceful shit because we've been doing the peaceful shit for so long that we hadn't really got anywhere with it. So he's then started, his own extreme little group, and it all sort of went the extreme route. But, like, looking back, like, I've always said, like, looking back, I hold my hands up and I say that I would probably be on the Malcolm X side of history because
100%,
because you look at what Martin Luther King did and how long he was doing it for. Black people wanted a change now, or like then, like we wanted it at that point. We didn't want to wait for it. We wanted it then. And I definitely think I would have been on the Malcolm X side of history. I know that it was the wrong side of history, but I definitely think looking back at what what was happening, for me it was one of them things where, well, actually, it was for me it's the only option. You're not listening to us when we're being quiet, and you're not listening to us when we're being loud. Well, you're not even listening, so we might as well be loud and get your attention because eventually you'll hear our message. Obviously, the peaceful protest side worked well and worked better. Than it, and that's why we're able, I guess, able to live a normal-ish life compared to what it could have been. So we'll move on to after school / adult life. Now, a topic that is big with you is the colorism.
Yeah, I'm massive on colorism. I find it so interesting. Like, I want to know everybody's opinions on it. Like, I think it's such an important topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention as it needs and as it deserves. So I just find it very interesting.
So, for people that don't know what colorism is, I'll let Lizzie explain it because she'll do a much better job than what I can.
I probably won't. So what I see colorism is, as like within the black community and not within the white community, but within the black community, there's stereotypes and ideals more often not favoured towards those of a lighter skin tone than towards those of a darker skin tone. So for example, like you'll probably hear the phrase a lot like, I don't like dark women, or she's too dark for me, or he's too dark for me. We see it a lot within like I don't know how you say this word, so please don't hate on me. Fetishism. Fetishization.
I think it's like fetishism.
fetishism.
Yeah.
So yes, this fetishism of lighter skinned males and mixed race boys and girls, whereas then there's a lot of negativity cast towards dark skinned individuals. Then at the same time, you also see this sort of hatred or this mixed emotions within the black community itself. Whereas it seems like mixed race people and black people, dark toned people and light toned people also find ways to discriminate against each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'll give you the Google. You did a very good job.
Yeah.
I'll just give the Google
Thank
one for
you.
people who are like, I don't know, who are not going to understand. So it just says prejudice or discrimination against individual with dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group.
Yeah.
So, this bit's gonna get me some hate. I tell you this right now.
Yeah, I think me and Dan have different opinions on this, which is fine. Again, everybody has different opinions.
So I personally think that the reason why black people are like this is because of white people. That is my bold statement, right? The reason why dark black people,
I'd agree with that, yeah.
the reason why dark black people don't like light skinned is because white people have deciphered, whatever you want to do, what fits in their agenda better. Light skinned people are closer to white, so therefore we fit their agenda more. And in recent times, it has become that the white female wants to have a caramel-ish baby, and they don't want it dark. They don't want it light. They go for the mixed race boy because it's going to give them, in quotations, a caramel baby.
With blue eyes, yeah.
With blue eyes and all of the unrealistic shit that comes along with that bullshit thing. But if white people hadn't put a stamp on, I like mixed race people because they're going to give me an olived caramel looking baby, black people wouldn't have a reason to hate on mixed race people. And then it comes down to work as well. The dark black people are saying that light skins are still in their jobs. And I think I did a video. I never uploaded it, and I wish I did. I uploaded it a week after the George Floyd thing, and I had all of these stats, and I think it was something like, if there's a mixed race person and a black person, 70% of the time, I'll try to find the stats somewhere, but it's something like 70% of the time the mixed race person will get it. And they'll have exactly the same qualifications, exactly the same pretty much everything, but 70% of the time the mixed race person will get it. Now, you could just say that, they did better in the interview, they fitted the company's agenda better, or whatever. But when we look down at it, why does that person fit the agenda better? Well, they're more white, they're probably going to fit in more. If they're proper black, they might have slightly different phrases that they use compared to somebody who's grown around with white people involved in their life. So my big statement is that I think that this stems from white people basically just putting in the boundaries for black people to turn against each other, essentially, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I do think you're right. I feel like as somebody that's mixed race, there's obviously an amount of privilege I get from being mixed race, from being a lighter skin tone, and I acknowledge that. And I think it's so important that people do acknowledge it. Like, it's so easy to just be like, I get no privilege because I can recall like 100 times I've been racially abused, but there is an amount of privilege I get from being a lighter skin tone.
100%.
The same way that darker skinned individuals, they don't have that white privilege. I have an aspect of privilege because I'm mixed race, because my mum is white, whereas dark skinned individuals don't have that privilege, that white privilege, because they don't have that aspect of being white. So it's very point blank in the fact is in like I feel like the reason why there is this divide in the community is because for dark skinned individuals, it's, well, you're saying you're black, you're saying you're this, but in reality, from what I see, you're getting that white privilege that the rest of us are being like, this is what we're fighting for, and you've got it already. But yeah, I do agree with what you said, isn't it? It's constructed off, again, this white ideology of being, well, the lighter, the better sort of thing, or that you're lighter, so you'll fit in a bit better with everybody else, or you're lighter, therefore you must be a bit whiter than the rest, which is completely incorrect. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle to see, that it is a false narrative. Like, it is completely like I don't know how I say it apart from like it's just wrong. It's just completely incorrect. But it's I feel like it's a lot easier for somebody that doesn't benefit from a privilege to be like, well, you don't understand how it is then to be black. I would never understand what it's like to be a black woman, but then I feel like a lot of mixed race people, what we feel like is I can never understand what it is to be like you and to have the experiences you've probably been through, but then don't discredit my own experiences
It's
of
that
race.
difficult thing, isn't it, where like what we said earlier, we're too light for black people, but we're too dark for white
Yeah,
people. And, what doesn't help, and one thing that I think that, as a black community, we definitely need to sort out and iron out is we're all in this together, no matter what shade of black we are. Uh, Even if you're biracial, what I think is you're black, but you've actually got white skin. So the rapper Logic, I believe, is biracial. So he's actually got a
oh
black.
well,
I believe that he's got a black mum and a black dad, and he's actually white. Um,
that's okay.
eh,
I didn't know that.
no matter like what skin shade you are, at the end of the day, we're all in this together. So we should cut
Yeah,
all the bullshit out and like, yeah, we do have slight more privilege, but we don't have much more privilege. And yes, it is still a privilege that we take for granted, and I'm so grateful for it. And I do appreciate that I've got it, and I do accept that I've got it. But also, we're in this together, because if as a front, if the black people aren't together, as many times as shown, if we're not united as a group, then other people aren't going to take us seriously. So it's one of them things where it is really hard, because like what Liz, you will talk about in a minute about having mixed race babies. I've had it a few times where I've had girls go, oh, I would love to have your children because I'd have mixed race babies, or I'd have caramel babies. It's sort of like we're just now being used yet again by white people for what they want.
you're that token black person again, or that token mixed race person again. It's kind of like it's a cycle where it was like I remember a time where it suddenly became like I say, I feel like it was when we were at school together. It became cool to be the black guy. Like,
Mm.
oh, like suddenly being a black man was really cool. I don't think like black girls have had that yet, but it's just a cycle. And then like what 5 years later, we're talking suddenly mixed race babies are a trend, and like you can just see it going round and round and round.
Yeah, it's one of them things where it's just sort of like, at the end of the day, you should love your kid no matter what. And at the end of the day, you can't pick what your child's gonna look like. You could have sex with a
Mm.
black man and it could still turn out white. So then, like, are you gonna love that kid any less because it's not mixed race, or it's not that caramel complexion that you was looking for? It's just one of them things where, like what we've said before, it's a sad world that we live in, that people idolize. Like what you said, like we're cool because we can give the white person what they want. It's kind of like, you should love us for who we are, and you should love your child for whatever it is. It shouldn't be
Yeah,
that token of, oh well, I'm gonna get this, so it's a win-win.
yeah, definitely.
But I would also like to mention that there's a fine line between fetishism, fet that fucking word that we can't say.
By the end of this, we'll know
I'm
fetishism.
gonna put it in
Is that
big
it?
cap letters as I say it, so that people can read it. But so there's a fine line between having a preference and a fetish of black people, I
This,
think.
yeah, this is such. I find, I think this is what we have, not different opinions on.
Mm.
There's such a thin line between fetishizing someone and having a preference, because my argument is one, where does this preference come from? Because a lot of the time I hear a lot of the time of like, oh, I won't date black women. And you think to yourself, all right, why? Oh, I just prefer not to. Okay, well, where's this preference coming from? Is this preference coming from like in my head? I can't think of an argument you could have to disregard an entire race. I find it really difficult unless that argument has come from. I just find it really hard. How could you say I don't date black women
Uh,
without there being some sort of racial thing within you that you might not have noticed? You know
Yeah, I
what I
think
mean?
I think this is something that we slightly disagree on, but I think that's because
Yeah,
I've got a male point of view of it. I think it's completely different because
yeah,
I've got a male point of view. So I've been quite lucky, I would say, in a non-big-headed way, because I'm mixed race, a lot of white girls, I suit their thing, their preference, whatever. So I've not really experienced that somebody's not going to date me because of this. So that's probably the reason why I don't feel as strongly towards this, but I can appreciate that it's a problem. However, like what we've said, the fine line is you can find something not attractive, and if you say that, that is not a problem. If I was to say I don't like dating black women because I don't find them attractive, that's fine to say. We can't find absolutely everything attractive, but also what I will say is that there is attractive black women. You can't.
Yeah, there's a difference between saying I don't find black women attractive or I wouldn't date black women to then being like all black women are ugly.
Yeah, like
that's all black women are ugly.
Because don't get me wrong, like there is some like we've got to say like Maya Jama, the Serena Williams,
Georgia
Smith.
Georgia
Please
tell me that. Thank you.
No, when you said Georgia, I was just like, is there somebody that we know on a first name on the first name basis? You know, like Mabel, like you know, you got Oprah Winfrey, you know, who's bigged it up gorgeous. For years. She is gorgeous. She's bigged up the black community for years. You know, she basically just turned around to the company like, fuck you, I'm making my own TV show because you ain't gonna fucking employ me. So fuck you and fuck you too. There is plenty of black women that are attractive. You can't then tarnish the whole thing because don't get me wrong, there are some ugly ass white women as well. You don't turn around and say I'm not dating white women because they're not attractive, because there's the beauty is in the eye of a beholder, but also there's a fine line between what you say and how it comes across. Because I would say that I wouldn't date dark women, but also in the same breath, I probably would if it also comes down to their personality as well. Do you know what I mean? Like we can't. Yeah. Essentially, what I think needs to happen is we just need to get rid of colour, and I don't want to date that person because they're rude as fuck. Not they've got black attitude, because that's another thing that is said quite a lot about black women is that they've got black attitude. Now I tell you now, they ain't got black attitude. They're just strong women who ain't gonna take your bullshit. That's basically what it is.
That's that perfect time for that what happened to me in first year. If you're watching this,
See you if you're watching this. I hope that you can sleep really well at night. Yeah, I hope that you can sleep well at night. You know, because this is a fucking liberty. You know, this is a liberty.
You're blessed. Yeah. No. So I've had that before. Like, even though I'm mixed race, I feel like I've had this black woman, black angry narrative thrown in my face, and like I wouldn't say I've got a short temper, but I would say like I'm a very chilled, like laid back, I'll laugh about anything person, but like I won't give you a warning, that sounds really serious, but like you'll know if you're getting on my nerves and like you just don't want to, but just don't irritate me and I won't irritate you. And I remember it was at pre-drinks one time, and I was in a house, and it was in Liverpool, my first year, and it was just all white people, which was fine. I didn't even think of it. We were all having a laugh, and something had happened. I won't say what. And it ended up with me and this guy getting into an argument, and we were friends, like we'd gone away together, like we were all mates, like a little group of us, and ended up with him getting in my face, like screaming down my neck. And I remember just snapping, and like I remember there was a group of people literally just watching, and like I know two of them were like training police officers at uni, like all lads, like quite a few big lads there, and I'm like 5'6" against this wall, and so they're like big guys shouting at me down my face. And I remember thinking to myself, this was like 5'2", like Maddie from down the street. I was like, you would have been like, all right, mate, you need to back off. So I remember I snapped.
And that's the thing of there's a completely different. There's a different line of like, oh well, a black woman will look after herself, but like what you just said there, if it was a white girl, we would be stepping in. Don't shout. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think like all of them lads should actually be a little bit ashamed of themselves that they let some like an adult male scream and shout at a female. I think they should all take a bit of shame, in my opinion. I feel like I've been grown up to be a gentleman, so it's one of the things where I'd like to hope that I would step in. I'd like to hope that somebody else would step in. So I'd just like to say on behalf of what I think, the people that you're talking about, you need to hang your heads in shame.
Yeah, if you're watching this, you know who you are. free feel to DM me an apology. But I remember I snapped and I just gone off and I was saying some horrible things. You know when like your temper takes that much. I was fuming. I'd gone off and I'd stormed out the house after that. And I remember a few people followed me and they were like, oh, you did so well in there. Like, oh, I can't believe you did that. Like, and these are my mates. I remember turning thinking like, you didn't step in there, did you? And I remember if you're my mate, I would do anything. Like, I would not see somebody get attacked in front of me like that. And I remember I don't talk to a lot of them anymore. And it was this narrative that came out that the next day everybody was like, oh, she just snapped. But it was that typical, like, angry, like, really, she was so aggressive. And I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I was getting, like, verbally attacked that day. I was stood up against the wall. And the narrative that's going around isn't that this boy was screaming and shouting down my face because of something that couldn't have been helped. That I didn't do anything wrong. I was defending a friend. It was that that it sounded, it was like they described it that bad as in like I'd got in his face, like I was threatening him, like it was like I might as well have had a knife. How bad they were describing it. Like,
oh my God.
She was like, yeah, I was so scared for him. And I was like, I'm a girl and I'm a feminist, like I don't need anybody to back me up, like I'll do it myself. I'm happy to argue on my own behalf. But at that moment I sat down and I thought, well, would it be different? And it probably would have been different if it was like my best mate Annabelle, like me and Annabelle were really close. And I thought it would have been different if it was her. It would have been different if it was any one of those girls that stood there. But because it was me, all of a sudden, I was like not forced, but like I was forced to turn into that angry black stereotype.
And like what we said before, like we're pigeonholed into acting like that sometimes because like I just think it comes down to what society do and don't do. Like that situation could have been completely avoided if somebody had stepped in and say, mate, you need to take take 5 minutes, Lizzie, you need to take 5 minutes, and then it will be calm. But actually nobody stepped in, and then like it then turned into you losing your head, and then Lizzie was so angry, blah blah blah. And actually if we take a step back, somebody should have stepped in. Why didn't they step in? Did they not want to step in because they thought that you could hold your own because you are black? It's down to them deeper roots yet again of people not even thinking are being they're systematically being like.
That's what I'm saying. Like if I was to mention like I thought any of that argument we had was to do with race, it wasn't to do with race at all. But the aftermath of that and the fact that nobody stepped in, the fact that I didn't get any messages or I didn't get an apology or anything from any of the guys or girls that didn't do anything about me being attacked then, like that makes me think, well, they don't think that's anything to do with race. But they probably spent the last 10 years, 20 years growing up in a white area with their white family, like being raised with that stereotype of like, don't get involved, like they'll hold themselves or that's their problem.
Yeah,
you know
definitely.
what I mean? So it is. But the second you bring that up, like you say the R word, I'm not a racist. Like, how dare you call me a racist? I'm not calling you a racist, but I'm saying maybe you should look inside of you and like clock that there is an aspect of internalized racism that you probably don't even realize you're having. But that's why we're having these conversations.
And that's what it is. It's educating people. Like my mum has been with my dad for 25 years, and like my mum was even like, I don't know, when we'll touch on it, like this is basically the whole reason why we're doing it is George Floyd. When all of the protests were happening, my mum was like, I feel like I wanted to get involved, but I also felt like I couldn't because I'm not black and blah blah blah. And it's that thing of why is that an issue? Like, I'm not gay, but I could go to gay pride.
Yeah.
I'm not a feminist, but I can stand with I can understand where they're coming from. So like why, and it's that thing of, yet again of like it's been stemmed down to like, oh, I don't want to step on their toes. Like this is their thing. Like I don't want to step on their toes. And like my mum's been with my dad who's black for 25 years, and she was like, oh, like me and my girlfriend, we went to the Black Lives Matter in Peterborough. And, like, she said that she was there for me. Like, she was there to support me. She was there to do it all for me. Like, she was willing to do anything I wanted to help the situation. And, it was so nice when I went to Peterborough. Like, blacks were stood with whites. Whites were stood with blacks. And we were stood all together. And we were like, we're going to fight this together. Instead of it being, this is your issue, deal with it. Like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to mention? I feel like you was just about to get into it there, and I feel like
I can't remember what it was then. I can't remember.
I feel like we'll touch on some of the other points, and then we'll go back to into a big topic. So one thing
Mhm.
that did stand out to me was Black history in textbooks. This one, when you put it
Yeah,
in, it stood out to me massively. Um, what is your honest opinion of Black history in textbooks?
it is ridiculous. It is so. I remember the only Black history I was ever taught was watching. Do you remember like is it Django and not Django Unchained? Do you remember
Oh, is it?
like with Kunta Kinte and
Is that that's called Roots? I think.
Roots? Amazing.
Is
Which
it
if you
called
haven't,
Roots?
but brutal. Yeah, it's like a series.
Yeah,
Really old
it's called
series.
Roots. It's from 1977. It had one
Yeah,
season. Yeah, it's called Roots.
yeah. An amazing series, like really good, but it's brutal. And I remember watching that in it was either in it wasn't in primary school. I think it was like year 7 or year 8 of secondary school. And if you watch some of the scenes in that, it is
Do
brutal,
you want to know
like
what? I've
really
never
visceral.
watched it.
I really recommend it. Like
I'm
from
gonna
what I
watch
remember,
it
like when I was
now
like 14, watch an episode
because
tonight. It was really good.
I remember we watched part of an episode in history. And the thing is, right? Can I just mention that, like, my school were really good in like putting me aside and being like, "Oh, we're going to talk about this. I hope, if you're offended, we won't do it while
Yeah,
you're in the room." But also, they didn't prepare me for. I feel like the history books, because the history books are written by white people or predominantly white people, they sort of pick and choose what they put in the history books, or they make it
it was
sound,
slaves,
yeah,
slaves, bit more slaves. How many slaves can we put
yeah.
into a ship?
And
Yeah,
it was kind of like that thing of they also made it be like, oh well, it was normal for the time, like
yeah.
slaves were normal for the time, so the fact that they packed eight,
Everybody had a
yeah,
slave.
everybody had a slave, so it kind of's okay. And I was like, I just remember being like, so like Black history and history was the topic where I got the most marks, because obviously I felt
Yeah,
so
I think it
strongly
was me.
about it that like I could put my own opinions on the page and it meant something.
Mm,
Um, and they sort of picked and choose, like, there's so many things that when we talk about the slave trade, we think about Africa to the Caribbean to America. But, we had, that's the main part. But also briefly, ever so slightly briefly touched on, was that the UK also was a part of that.
but that's not that important. We'll focus
Yeah, it's
on
like,
America.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
focus on America racism when actually we need to be like in history books, and I totally stand by this. We need to change the history books or what schools are taught. Yes, talk about American Black history because yes, we're African American or whatever you want to fucking say it is, or Afro
Mm,
African whatever.
Caribbean. Yeah.
When we're in the UK, we need to talk about the racism that happened in the UK. We need to talk about the slave trade. We need to talk about the people that were involved. Now, we'll sort of mix the topics in with the points that we have. When George Floyd died and there was protests in the UK, I believe it was in York, they pulled down that statue.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't even know that he was a slave trade person. I didn't know. I didn't know that
Yeah.
he had slaves. But he's in my own country, but I could tell you that a cotton picking farmer had 100 slaves a day and they slept in
Yeah, I
shitty
could tell you all
conditions.
about like these Jim Crow laws, but I couldn't tell you unless I'd researched it a lot about what happened in the city I live in,
Yeah,
which was a massive slave
and
port.
that's
Yeah.
the issue of the reason why it kicked off so bad is because we haven't been educated properly. So when people found out that the person that York idolized was a had slaves and he used the slave trade, but like that, I can almost tell you, they had that girl who used to have to walk X amount of miles just to get to a good school. I can't remember her
Mm.
name. The history, like my history teacher's going to be kicking me in, but she was a young girl who had to walk miles just to get to a good school. Um, you had the Jim Crow people in America, but I can't tell you a single person that was involved in any Black history in the UK because we just weren't taught it.
No. Yeah. And
Uh,
also we were only taught about like not negative Black history, but I remember feeling like I loved history. Like I chose it for AS for a little bit. And I remember like the only thing apart from like we did like Nazis and like we did so much on Britain and like the 16 like I don't know. Sorry teacher, whoever you were, but like the kings and queens like Charles and whatever. But I never learned anything good about black people. I never learned anything that I could have been like, oh wow, like that's insane. Like I never went home and like not like not I don't want to say not proud, but I never went home and was excited to say something like, oh my god, guess what? Did you hear about what happened? It was always like write down a statistic, and then
I
these statistics
I
just
found
become
out that
numbers.
the KKK people killed X amount of people this year or this month in this.
Yeah,
It was never. Oh,
brilliant.
did you know that? The only person who we probably learned about who was positive, and it was only a small section, was Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
and
And
then
even then, I remember one of my essay questions being like, and MLK I did briefly, and I think one of our essay questions, this was at UAH, was oh I don't know if I'm allowed to say school, sorry.
we fuck it, UAH, fuck it.
Fuck it, I'm letting you know. One of the questions was like something like I remember in a class doing something like assess not the bad points about Malcolm X, but why didn't Malcolm X thrive, or assess the negatives of Malcolm X. I remember thinking, you want me to sit here and write a list or write like a 3-page essay about the negatives of somebody that fought for.
What
I just think that's insane. Yeah, what I believe in.
And it's
Yeah.
not, the only person, and it was literally probably one lesson, Rosa Parks.
Yeah,
Literally like one lesson. Oh yeah, she sat on a bus. She got black people to be able to sit on buses because they boycotted buses. Oh, okay. Like that was literally like one lesson.
yeah.
But like
And there were hundreds of other people like Rosa Parks.
yeah, and the thing is we just weren't
yeah.
taught about it. And I feel like history books in the UK need to definitely, or like, the examining boards need to definitely create a part for black history for the UK, because I feel like there's a lot that's been untold and is trying to be swept under the carpet because we're trying to sort of like one thing that we can't do is we can't erase history, but what we can do is educate and we can change the future. Now, one thing that I will say regarding the George Floyd and that statue being pulled down is I don't condone it. That's my personal preference. I don't condone them tearing it down, but I do understand. The only thing that I think we should have done that is slightly different, because like what we've explained before, is we then lead into that violent narrative that people want to feed into to make us look bad, what is going to stop our growth. What we should have done is we should have protested in the right way. I'm not saying that it was the wrong way, but maybe peacefully, and we should have a plaque, a bit of fucking concrete next to the guy that explained the goods and the bads of him, because that statue explained how he did lots for the community, but also on the next bit of plaque it should have said about how he was also involved in the slave trade and explained all of the negatives that he'd done, because then you're being fair to history. We're not forgetting one part, because I think that's what is happening is we're going, oh well, he did really good here, and then we're forgetting about that he had slaves, he was involved in the slave trade. If we just put a plaque that said he did lots for the community, but he did have slaves and he did use the slave trade, we don't condone with this at all. You then go in, well, he did lots of good stuff. He also did lots of bad shit, but I've learned something.
Yeah.
And I think that's...
I
think that's how we should go forward with all of the statues that are up that want to be ripped down. Don't rip them down, because what that does is it turns people against us. So the masses... So the people, unfortunately, the people who are going to change shit for us, they're all white. That's a fact. The people that can change shit for us are white. If we're going to piss them off, nothing's going to change. But what we can do is if we get them on board, we can then make a change. So saying shit like, oh, let's tear down all of the statues that have got racist people. No, because some of them are national treasures. Like Nelson's Column and Trafalgar Square and all of them people or them places. We can't just tear down history. We can't rewrite history. But what we can do is we can educate the people who are going to visit these places. So I think like Nelson Column, something was out that he was a racist, or somebody who got a bit of land in London, a statue, they wanted to tear it down. When we say stuff like that, it turns the masses against us. So the white people who were on the fence are now not on our side, and the people that were on our side are now on the fence. If we, we've got to be strategic in what we do to get the things that we want done. So I think we can't rip down all of the statues, but we can educate the plaques that are next to the statues.
Yeah, see, like, before you started like explain that bit, I was like very much in the belief like when I saw that statue get torn down, I was like kind of I was with them. I was like, yes, like this is like the change, the power we need to see. But I do understand where you're coming from. Like in hindsight, what does that prove? What does that prove apart from like we're not standing for this anymore? Like this, yeah, yeah. To be fair, you made a really good point there. Like for example, I'll use Liverpool as an example. Like it was a massive like port during the slave trade, and a lot of the roads here are named up. Like we've got like I think it's Jamaica Road or Jamaica Street. Like they're all named I think after like Caribbean islands. A lot of them because that's where a lot of the slaves came from. So there was a lot of people saying, well, while this BLM thing was going around George Floyd, a lot of people saying, well, I want all this, we should get all the street names changed to like powerful black people, like black power movements or people that were in the black power movement. And on one hand, you're thinking that is amazing and that would be so symbolic. But on the other hand, you think, well, wouldn't that be even more amazing if we had Jamaica Street and a plaque explaining, well, why is this street called Jamaica Street? Well, in reality, Liverpool has a massive history to do with the slave trade. You've made a really good point about like how our aim is about informing and educating. We're not trying to change history. We're not trying to like say none of this ever happened because like we were never equal. And to be fair, like it's unlikely in our lifetimes we'll see equal. There's always going to be like we're ethnic minorities at the end of the day. There's always going to be some sort of disproportionality here.
I personally think that there'll probably never ever be equality, ever.
Yeah.
And it upsets me to say that actually, realistically, it's never going to happen. As long as the system is set up the way that it is now, for generations to come, they're still going to be saying the same shit that we're saying now. The only difference is
100%.
it's like what my dad said, you know, racism hadn't gone away. Racism is just documented more now. We've got phones, we've got recorders now. We can capture a lot more than what could be captured back in the day. You know, the media, they are just arseholes as a whole. I personally, you know, the Black Lives Matter things, you know, they didn't talk about the millions of peaceful protests. They picked out the couple that turned violent and run with it on the news. You know, and
then all the anti-mask protests were just completely ignored.
And that's the thing, they used the big thing of, oh, they're doing these protests during COVID. That's so reckless. And it's like, is fighting for a basic human right, is there a good time to fight for that? Like, should I pencil it in a calendar for you? And like,
it's like, so you're that angry we're protesting, but you don't have that same level of anger when you're recognizing that there is a difference between us both. It's like how I dealt with family members and how I won't say who, but like somebody really close to me being like, that's so stupid that they're going out and protesting this. And I'm like, well, so you don't think racism exists then? Well, no, racism does exist. So then you're angry that they're protesting against racism. Well, yeah, so you think racism should be around then? Well, no. Well, you can't have it both ways.
You can't have both ways.
You don't get to pick and choose, yeah. If I can't pick and choose when I'm racially abused, you can't pick and choose when I'm going to fight for my right.
And the thing is, like, a lot of them were done, you know, the one in Peterborough, definitely, it was social distanced. And they kept on reminding us, you know, they kept on saying, put your arms out and spin. If you can touch somebody, you're too close to them. You know, I'll find out the woman that set up the Peterborough one because somebody that I work with knows her very well. So I'll try and see if maybe we could speak to her because it would be great to speak to her. I believe she's white and she's also got a mixed race child. That kid is so cute, by the way. Hopefully, I'll try to get in contact with her and see her opinion because the Peterborough one was so special to me because it was so close to home. It was peaceful. And everybody was welcome. You know, like what I said, there was a lot of white people there who were there for the cause, were their partners or who agreed with what was happening. Did you go to any protests?
I didn't get to go. There was a massive one in Liverpool that I didn't get to go to because I'd moved home at that point. But in Liverpool, it was insane. Like, a lot of people sent me photos of it. And a girl I used to work with, actually, shout out B if you're watching this. But I know she did quite a few, I don't know if she spoke at it or she was in charge of like a lot of people, or I think she spoke at it actually. and it was amazing for like to see like Liverpool's a very white dominated area, and I feel like racism's like it's quite frequent in Liverpool to be fair, but to see the black community and there was like quite a lot of white people there, and I remember like all the like buildings on the docks changed their lights and everything, so that was like pretty amazing to see. But in Blackpool, it was like there are a few like socially distanced ones, but they were like much more low key and like a few of us.
Low key,
But there
like.
was it was still something sort of thing.
So we've covered loads, what has been great, and I want to talk about the main reason why this has all come to light, and the reason why we're able to sit down and talk is George Floyd. Now, for people who maybe are too young and who were too young at the time or didn't quite understand what was going on, George Floyd was a black man who, he particularly didn't have a great past with the law. He was trying to change his life from what I'd read. And he was killed by a policeman kneeling on his neck for, I think it was 8 minutes.
Yeah, while people watched and filmed and
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I watched a video the other day, and I have to say that I agree with what he was saying. Basically, there's unseen footage that the media have held back about the George Floyd case, and essentially, he was high on fentanyl, what is a drug in America that is quite big. So he was high on a drug, and he was acting not recklessly, but he wasn't acting normal. The police, to be fair, dealt with him in the best possible manner. Up until the point where they knelt on him. I will put the video in because it's not copyrighted. I will put the video in. Now, I don't want people to hate on me and say that I'm sympathising, because don't get me wrong, I cried when I saw that video. My dad cried. It really touched home with me. But I want people to also understand that I'm not blind to what's going on. George Floyd was high. He had potentially used a banknote. It doesn't accept the reason why he's dead now. It should have never happened. But the police did deal with him in a proper manner up until the point where they knelt on his knee. That is a tactic that is used across America and used across the UK as a restraint method, because obviously you're putting all of your body behind. Maybe it's something that we could, as a system, we could change the way that police deal with it. But how did it make you feel when you first heard the news?
I don't know how to describe it, like shock and upset, but at the same time, it's kind of like a bit of like, not a here we go again.
It's like
but
not like
it,
it's like literally that thing
yeah,
like we're now normal to it. What is sickening to
yeah,
say?
it's another name sort of thing. I remember when the Alton Sterling one came out a few years ago, and I think he'd been shot in his car or outside his car or something had happened anyway. I remember reading about him when I was younger, and all I could think was like, okay, like not this is a new normal, but like we'd been a while without hearing any names in the UK from the US, and then it's like, well, this one comes out, and it was like this hope, oh, something's going to change, like something's going to be different. And then for the first few weeks, the first week, I think it was really quiet over here, and I think we all sort of thought as like a black community, like I remember I think I wrote something on Facebook about it or Instagram or something, and nothing was really said, and then it gradually started to pick up pace and gather speed.
I think what happened in the UK was black people were, for me, I was scared, I was shocked. It brought home a lot of things again for a black male and for a black female. So I feel like as the black community, we were shocked, and the rest of the UK thought that they were guilty free.
Yeah, I remember going into, I think I worked at Wilco's at the time. Love you all there. I think I remember going in and like nobody was speaking about it. I remember our work group chat. I work at a Caribbean restaurant. I won't name the name, but I work at a Caribbean restaurant that's meant to be authentically Caribbean. I remember not one person put anything on there, and it took me and another girl. This when all the petitions came out, and I had to put something in there to be like guys, I don't know if you know what's going on because not one of you has said anything, and these people I class as my really close friends. Or you haven't said anything, you haven't spoken about it. Like you've all got a platform, no matter how small. You haven't shared anything, so like could you please like sign petitions? Like, this is what it means to me. This is what it means to my community, my family. Like, that could have been my brother. That could have been me one day. Like, you don't know. But like, it's a really meaningful cause. I remember like getting like no replies about it. And I think at that point, it was like a step back and you kind of think like, although this isn't something that's happened in close quarters to where we live, like it's not something that's happened in our city or our country sort of thing. It's something that could easily happen, and the people around us don't care about it. And that for me, I feel like that's what gave it like a lot of thrust. That we all thought, well, why is nobody else angry? Why is nobody else putting anything into this? And then I think that's what gave it a bit of like a power behind it, definitely.
Now, the next thing that we're gonna talk about is the riots that then followed.
Hmm.
Now, for me, I agree with what you know what? Fuck it. I fully agreed with everything that happened in them riots. I feel
Hmm.
like we'd been quiet for so long, or we'd tried to do things for so long. A little bit like what I said with the Malcolm X thing. We had tried to do something for so long that we had actually just got to the stage of, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
You know what? Fuck this. If you're not gonna listen to us quietly, we're gonna make noise, and we're gonna keep on going with it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I agreed with the riots. I wish that we could do it peacefully, and I wish that there was better ways to do it. But I think that sometimes for your voice to be heard, you have to do the extremes, and I feel like this time the extremes have had to, especially in America. In the
Yeah.
UK, we did quite well at doing it peacefully,
Yeah.
and I think we did that because, well, I guess in the UK there, in the areas where I live, and we are outnumbered in quote non-offensive way that I can say that we're outnumbered. So I feel
Yeah,
like
definitely. Yeah.
we kind of just, we wanted to make our voices heard, and we wanted to make sure that we could do it in the best possible way, because in America, COVID wasn't exactly a huge thing,
Yeah.
and still isn't. As in the UK, we're taking it a bit more seriously. So I feel like we didn't want to rub salt in the wounds. How did you feel about the riots?
Yeah, I totally understood. I feel like I live at that point, I'd moved back home, so I was living with my mum and my stepdad. And I remember them talking about it being like, this is disgusting, like this is terrible, like this is ridiculous. I remember thinking to myself, like, the aim of the riots is to get like their voices heard, our voices heard. And it's on BBC News. It's on the news. You're reading about it on Facebook. I'm like, it's working.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's kind of like if you're not listening to people when they're peacefully protesting, you're not listening to these petitions. This is like another name, another man on a list of hundreds. Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you want them to do? What do you want people to do when it's got to the point of yeah, when people argue against the riots, my argument is, well, what do you want them to do then? Or
And that
peaceful
and that
protest.
is the
Well, we
thing.
spent years doing that.
And that is
Yeah,
the thing. When you ask people, what do you want us to do? They give the answer, well, I don't know, or they say, oh, just do more peaceful protests. And unfortunately, we've got bored of doing that without a
yeah.
change.
Why? My thing is like, it's so easy to like peacefully protest. Why should a group of people have to peacefully protest for their right to be treated equally?
And it's a
Do you
basic
know what I
human
mean?
right as well.
Yeah. You shouldn't even have to protest that at all. So don't kind of sit there and then tell me that, oh, this group of people are wrong for rioting and non-peaceful protesting. Okay, well then tell me what I can do then. Because
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, nothing else has like been seen as effective.
So we've kind of covered everything. What has been good. I feel like we've done the best that we could do with what we'd written down. Now I feel like finally, um, what I think the best way is going to be to put this is, what are we slash as individuals going to do now? What are we personally going to be doing to help?
So at uni, I take predominantly like modules based in race. So like I do international politics, but I've done like politics of the Middle East and politics of racialization. I've done Black history. So I'm constantly educating myself, and I think as a Black person, as a mixed race person, as a white person, but especially as a Black and mixed race individual that maybe hasn't grown up really in tune with their culture, education is so important. And there's so many books out there and so many things that will open your eyes. Like Like While No Talking to White People About Race, that was an amazing read. Natives by Akala, that's an amazing read as well. There's so many things we can do. And then like doing stuff like this, like recording ourselves, like it's nice to see, I think, like two young Black people just
Yeah,
talk and have different
100%.
opinions and have similar opinions about topics that I think a lot of the topics we've spoken about are topics like I wouldn't really have people around me to like sit down and have a chill debate or talk about. And then making sure that this isn't just like a few months and then it will settle back down again. Like whatever we're doing now, we want to take forwards with us.
Yeah,
Like it's
definitely.
not something that it's not a trend, if that makes sense.
So, what I'm going to be doing is one thing that I want to say is for all of the Instagram people who are posting pictures of bikinis and big, who are using their platform for that. I reach out personally and I look into the camera as I say this. I want you to actually do something that's going to be positive for the world. Yes, your Instagram likes of you bikini might make you feel good, but is it changing the world? The answer is no. I would like you who have got big followers to share stuff, share this video, share what's going around in the news to make it more public. What I'm going to be doing personally is, like what Lizzie said, I want to turn this into something that we can sit down with different guests. I'm already thinking of people that I know, people that would do, who are also big on the topic, who want to make a change. I'll get into contact with them and hopefully then we can bring in their crowd into this who are then going to watch previous episodes. I'm going to be using my socials, what are going to be down in the description below to carry on putting things now. Like this week, me and Lizzie both basically put the same thing, that Black Lives Matter isn't a trend. What I want to do is in my local area, I want to hold a talk. I want to go into my secondary school, and I would like to go into primary schools, and I'd like to talk about race, because I feel like schools are in a difficult situation. They don't know what quite to do, but I'd like to sit down and have a talk or like a workshop about race so that the people in the school who are Black can feel like they've got a bit of an identity. And I'd like to build up a workshop where people can communicate with each other and hopefully feel better about themselves. And then finally, I normally do something for charity every year. Now, last year was a bit fucked because of COVID, but hopefully with restrictions lifting, I'll be able to do something that is going to be bigger than what I've ever done before. Now, normally I donate to a cancer research charity, but I thought that circumstances have changed and I need to... Cancer research was something that I'd done because it affected my friend's mum and affected my nan, but I need to do something that's going to affect me, and that is changing the Black community. So I'm going to be hosting a charity event that is penciled in to cycle from where I live to where my nan and granddad, where my granddad now lives in Scotland. It's roughly 350 something miles, and I plan to bike that in a course of 3 to 4 days, stopping off at hotels to sleep. So I'm going to set up a page for you guys to donate. It's going to be something that I push quite heavily, but I plan to cycle from where I live to Scotland, and I'm going to be donating the money to a Black Lives Matter charity, or a charity that is going to put money back into the Black youth so that we can break the chain and we can get the kids out of the situations that they're in, and then we can hopefully then push forward for a better life for everybody. So that's what I plan to be doing personally. Me and Lizzie, Elizabeth, we're gonna
Whatever,
be
yeah.
yeah, I'm just gonna reel them all off. We're gonna be working closely together now. I think because we both share such a big passion for it, that we're gonna be working together. I feel like we we've already got a couple of ideas of what we want to do in the future. If Lizzie wants, I'll drop her socials down below if you want to get in contact with her about how you feel and about how Lizzie has potentially helped with how she's dealt with herself growing up. I'm more than happy to do that. And if Lizzie, if you're happy to do that, we can hopefully
Yeah, definitely.
get some Black women or some young Black ladies who are struggling, and hopefully reach out to you. We plan on making a couple more of these, and like Lizzie said, this is not a trend, this is our life, so we're going to basically keep on going until until the issue was sorted. It's been simply being Dan, or Dan, because this has turned deep. So it's been Dan. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. It's a little bit longer than something that I normally do, but I feel like there shouldn't be a time limit on when it comes to stuff like this. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Leave your comments down below. Subscribe for more content like this. There's lots of different things on the channel. Gaming, vlogs. There's now podcast-like things happening. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Lizzie, for coming along.
That's all right.